News coverage live from Vancouver International Airport tonight. A small plane is down, crashing at around 4 o'clock this afternoon. 7 people have been rushed to area hospitals. The extent of their injuries unclear at this point. And there is an unconfirmed report that 1 person has died. Officials with the Transportation Safety Board confirmed the plane was experiencing problems before it went down just short of the runway.
The information we have is much like you do, like twin departing from Vancouver. We understand from the south runway reported some problems and subsequently crashed. We are, of course, mobilizing more investigators to try and get to the scene quickly and start our investigation.
CTV has Chopper 9 and several crews on the ground at this crash scene tonight, including Shahid Devji at YVR. Shahid, what can you tell us tonight?
Well, Mike, we're in Burkeville here, just about 300 meters away from the crash scene, and police just moved everybody here in this residential neighborhood 100 or a few meters back because they're worried about the toxic fumes that are coming from, I guess, the materials that the fire crews were using, the materials that are coming from the plane. So everybody's been moved back, but the crews still are on scene. They're still obviously continuing their investigation. Speaking to some witnesses, they heard this explosion just after the crash, or at the time of the crash, and they say it was unlike anything they've ever heard here at the airport. Unlike a car crash, it was more of a thud of plane hitting concrete. And then they came out, and the crews were instantly on scene, as were some innocent bystanders, people from their cars who got out to help, and that may have helped save some lives.
All right, Shahid, thanks very much. Shahid Devji live at YVR tonight, part of our continuing coverage of the crash of Flight 204, a flight operated by Northern Thunderbird Air, crashing just short of the runway at 4:12 this afternoon. As we mentioned, several people have been rushed to area hospitals. Rob Brown is live at Richmond General tonight. Rob?
Mike, which has been under lockdown for the last 2 hours, the only people getting into this hospital related to this plane crash. They simply did not want anyone else from the public muddling things up. They have a crisis here. Now, in terms of numbers, we understand from Vancouver Coastal at least 3 patients were transported here, 6 to VGH. That's coming from Vancouver Coastal. However, BC Ambulance is reporting 5 to VGH in critical, 4 non-critical to Richmond General. So the numbers are still fluid here. Here's what I can tell you. I spoke with a paramedic who was in an ambulance who transported 2 patients. He said they were in fine condition, his words, up, walking around, no visible burns. I then overheard at the entrance of emergency here another paramedic making a call to someone at VGH saying, I just spoke with a man who was concerned about his wife. They were both on the plane. He was transported here. He doesn't know where his wife was. Do you know where she was? Pause. The answer came back, great. So stable, great. So the understanding from that conversation is there was at least 1 couple on board that plane. They were separated when the emergency crews got to the scene. One ended up at VGH, the other here at Richmond General. Code Orange has just been lifted. This means that members of the public are now being allowed into Richmond General, but Vancouver Coastal advising people still, if they can, to stay away. Non-emergent matters only at this time. Please stay away. Emergent matters obviously can still come here, but for now the focus is on the plane crash victims and the people who will be showing up here undoubtedly to check on their loved ones, Mike.
And in some respects, Rob, this may be shaping up to be somewhat of an amazing story of survival if what you're saying is actually true.
Well, if there's only 1 person who's dead, and we got to obviously emphasize the fact that there's an unconfirmed report that there is 1 fatality, then no question about it, given the visuals that we've been showing our viewers, that if that many people, upwards of 9 people, walked away from this and at this point have survived, yeah, undoubtedly people will categorize this as a minor miracle.
Indeed. All right, Rob Brown live at Richmond General tonight with the latest from there. Chopper 9 reporter Negar Motaheji was in the air in Chopper 9 minutes after the incident, and she joins us from the airport now. Tell us what the response was like when this incident happened, Negar.
Well, Richmond Fire, along with Airport Fire, was Richmond Fire, along with Airport Fire, was immediately they came onto the scene and were able to contain this fire eventually. I mean, it happened over an hour ago, and thick black smoke could be seen from kilometers away, but the fire was able to be contained. Firefighters applied foam to fight this fire, and you can see all the foam right now currently on your scene. Ambulance and emergency vehicles still are on the scene right now, but they are on standby as passengers of this small plane crash are either have been transported to VGH or Richmond General Hospital. Investigators from the Transportation Safety Board still are on scene as well and continue to investigate what happened today. Mike?
All right, Nagar, thanks so much. Nagar was up in CTV's Chopper 9 just after this went down. Those pictures obviously taken by Chopper 9. These images you're seeing now are courtesy of Ted Townsend from the city of Richmond. Still shots taken just after the crash. You can see obviously fire crews had poured a whole lot of fire retardant on this aircraft as it was burning. A large fire, massive plume of black smoke seen after Flight 204, this Northern Thunderbird airplane crashed just as it was trying to return to YVR. And let's pick it up there with Mark Miller, our aviation expert. This flight had left Vancouver International and was heading on a charter, we believe, to Kelowna, but obviously was experiencing problems en route.
Yeah, it looks like it was a normal takeoff. We looked at some of the tape. The airplane took off normally. It started its climb out, and it was headed out over Golden Ears Park, sort of a departure that takes it out over Pitt Meadows. It got out sort of probably 15, 20 miles north of Pitt Meadows. And then we see the airplane clearly turned around and headed back. And that fits with the story that Bill Yearwood from the Transportation Safety Board relayed to us, that the airplane reported some sort of a problem. This is the actual airplane, same tail number, Charlie Golf, X-Ray, Romeo, X-Ray, appears to be operated by Northern Thunderbird, which does a lot of charter work for mining companies in this province. Been around a long time. Company is the result of a merger of two other airlines. I think it was Northern Territory Air and Thunderbird. So it's airline with a great reputation, hasn't had a lot of problems, and this airplane itself is a real workhorse in terms of the charter business. In fact, I've used this in the North lots, this very same kind of airplane.
With, as you say, a pretty good safety record.
Great safety record. I feel totally safe on this airplane. And we like this airplane because it can take lots of stuff, and it goes fast.
All right, now let's look at these pictures, Mark, and tell us, and I don't want you to speculate on what may have gone wrong, but obviously the aircraft almost made it back to the runway, just falling short.
Sure. So one of the things I noticed right away looking at this airplane, you can see on the left-hand side, I see an engine intact and a wing. On the right-hand side, there's no engine, no wing. That is either the result of that initial impact. In some of the earlier shots, we could see there was some fire, and a fire truck was foaming it. If you just see the very left of your screen there, there's a piece of something, and I see the flames there just going out of frame. I think that is the other wing. Question is, did that wing come off when the airplane hit the ground? Because that looks like the first impact point. Or did that wing actually, did he have a fire when he was coming in? Did it burn through? Did he have an engine failure on his way back? He's going slow, he's got his gear down, his flaps out. When you do your multi-engine rating, you learn how to fly an airplane on one engine, but it is challenging. And this last critical phase of flight here, this is really important. He's starting to go kind of slow. And he almost makes it over the fence. It really, this pilot got it almost all the way back.
And you've been looking at information as to how far the plane actually had made it from YVR before it decided it better turn around.
Sure, it made it out towards Golden Ears Park, out north, and it was nearly at 10,000 feet when it turns around.
All right.
So this airplane was well on its way. So it wasn't a problem right on departure, which when we first hear about an airplane returning to an airport after it's taken off, it had to return to the airport. You think immediately had a problem on takeoff.
Okay, and once again, we're looking at the actual aircraft involved in this crash this afternoon. It is a 9-passenger Beechcraft King Air 100 crashing, just as Mark said, short of the runway, returning on a flight from YVR to Kelowna when something went wrong. But what is emerging tonight appears to be a remarkable story of survival. We do have the unconfirmed report that one person has been killed, but BC Ambulance Service is telling us that there are, if my numbers are correct, 9 people that have been taken to area hospitals, 4 to Richmond General, 5 to Lionsgate, which would suggest Again, not wanting to speculate, but would suggest that their injuries would be more serious, that they would be in critical condition, perhaps suffering from some burns. But the mere fact that they, Mark, were able to make it out of this aircraft is incredible.
I think what's incredible is the early pictures we see, we don't see very much fire at all. And that's probably where lives are saved here. The airplane, it looks like that fire develops over a little while, and the airplane is consumed by a post-crash fire. But there was enough time to get people out of the airplane. And this is why I always say to people, listen to that briefing. Where are the exits? Count the number of rows to the exits. Figure out what you're going to do. These people probably knew there was a problem, so they had some time to plan and get ready. But really pay attention to that safety briefing, because this is the kind of thing that can save your life.
All right, Mark, thank you for your insight. A little bit earlier, my colleague Colleen Christie spoke with an individual who witnessed this afternoon's crash at YVR.
Eyewitness Stephen Van Dolder spoke to us earlier, and Stephen, you saw just after the flight crashed. You didn't see it go down, but you saw it shortly afterwards. Stephen, what can you tell us?
Yeah, I saw it shortly afterwards. Mainly, the sky was just filled with black smoke, and like I said earlier, I went and drove a bit closer. I was airside at that point on the airport, and then I decided to get into my vehicle, see if I could get closer, and I got probably 100 feet away from the plane itself.
And what were you seeing when you took your camera out?
At that point, just a lot of emergency vehicles, a lot of firefighters, ambulance. They were surrounding the plane. They had it out at that point. It seemed like there's a couple people that were pulled out on the road. I couldn't see them very well because there's obviously a lot of people attending to them.
Right.
And then we were there for, there's probably about a crowd of 20 or 30 of us around there, and then eventually the police just pushed us back.
Okay. And that was at about 12 minutes after 4 o'clock this afternoon, right?
Yeah, about that after it crashed. When we were getting pushed back, they were pulling out some devices to cut open the plane is kind of what it looked like to me.
Can you give us an idea of how quickly from the point of crash to when you heard sirens running, what kind of time frame that was?
The first time I noticed something was going on is when I saw a bunch of smoke in the air. So I don't know exactly when it crashed, but the sirens came pretty quick, and as soon as the airport field truck started shooting their foam or whatever it is on it, it went out very quickly. I was surprised how fast it got the flames out.
All right.
Colleen Christie speaking to a witness of this plane crash this afternoon near YVR. Right now, we want to bring in from the Transportation Safety Board, Bill Yearwood, to give us an update on what the Safety Board has learned so far. Bill, I appreciate early stages of your investigation, but what does it appear to you happened to this aircraft after it left YVR at this stage?
Well, we've just got 3 investigators on site right now, and we're... hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Bill. We can hear you.
Okay. We've just got 3 investigators on site right now, and we understand the aircraft had departed, reported a problem, and was returning, had been cleared to land, and of course, crashed on the road short of the runway. Our team is gathering as much information as possible. They're on site, and we'll be securing any perishable evidence, and then go from all the data that's available.
And Bill, at this point, any idea of the nature of the problem that you mentioned that caused the pilot to want to turn back to Vancouver?
No, I'm not able to confirm what the pilots considered a problem at this time. We just know that they reported the problem, and we're heading back. The initial information suggests that the problem was not one that caused them to declare an immediate emergency, but they were being handled and cleared to land.
So clearly they thought they could make it back.
I can't speak to that, of course, but I know that the route back was the most direct route, and they were cleared to land on that runway and fell just short.
All right, Bill Yearwood, Transportation Safety Board, thanks so much for your help tonight. Right now we're going to go back out to Richmond General Hospital. That's where Rob Brown has been throughout the afternoon and evening. Rob, what have you got?
Yeah, Mike, so those ambulances just leaving now. Obviously a dramatic afternoon for paramedics who've grown used to this kind of activity over the years, but this one is unusual. So I just want to reiterate a bit of what we saw unfold here earlier. Every entrance point to Richmond General here clogged with people trying to get inside to see loved ones, not necessarily related to this plane crash. In fact, we haven't seen anyone related to this plane crash family of victims show up yet, but people who just wanted to get and see people in other wards, they weren't being allowed in because this entire hospital is essentially under lockdown, all staff concentrating on what we believe are only 3 of the victims who ended up here. That's coming from Vancouver Coastal. We don't have conditions, but we understand from speaking to at least one paramedic on site here that 2 of the people transported here were just fine. They were up, they were walking around, they suffered no burns. Now, we've also heard that there may be as many as 4 here. That's coming from BC Ambulance, their service, and 5 in critical condition transported to VGH. But I just want to reiterate a moment we had earlier, a lot of drama, a lot of chaos at the door to Richmond General's emergency room here when I overheard a conversation between a paramedic and another paramedic on the phone, and he was asking whether or not the person that he transported, whether his wife was on the other end at VGH and whether she was okay, because he brought a man here who was on that flight and he was obviously there with his wife, and they both ended up being split up. He got confirmation on the phone that the wife was in fact in stable condition and transported to VGH to great relief. There was a big smile across that paramedic's face, and he ran back inside the emergency room here to inform him. Now, Code Orange was lifted just a short time ago, Mike, which means people can return to the hospital, but Vancouver Coastal still advising only those with emergent issues show up here because they are still concentrating on the victims of this plane crash here. And we just saw some grief counselors, some victim services folks show up here to try and deal with the psychological effects if they don't suffer any physical, which would be amazing, but the psychological effects of this plane crash and, of course, the aftermath. So we'll be here checking on whether any family, relatives, or friends show up. In the meantime, back to you.
All right, Robin, as you say, a really amazing story, it would seem, to survive, at least for some of those passengers tonight. Our coverage of the plane crash at YVR will continue a little bit later on in this newscast. To a CTV News exclusive now, we have learned of a major breach of confidential medical information at Vancouver General Hospital. Officials confirm hundreds of patients may be at risk of identity fraud, and that's just the beginning of the problem. Here's consumer reporter Linda Steele with a story you'll only see on CTV.
When I opened my mailbox and I saw it was confidential from Vancouver Coastal Health, I was like, oh no, what is this?
Carolina Becerra opened that letter to discover her hospital records from Vancouver General and other personal information had been compromised. The letter said that a laptop and USB drive containing the details were lost while being used outside Coastal Health facilities.
I was really upset because this is very personal information that I don't think should be floating around in somebody's laptop.
In the letter, Coastal Health wrote, "We have no reason to believe that the information contained on the devices would be used for any malicious purposes. However, we think it is important that you are aware of this matter in order that you may protect yourself against any form of identity fraud."
It's like, oh, it's no big deal. Your information is lost and we don't know where it is, but don't worry about it. We don't think it's going to be used for any malicious purposes. It's like, how do you know?
Carolina now has to cancel her credit cards and file a report with police.
But if it's hospital files, I'm probably not the only one.
She's right. CTV News has confirmed 450 surgical patients at Vancouver General Hospital have had their medical and personal information compromised. Vancouver Coastal Health officials tell us a laptop containing patients' unencrypted files was lost by a medical resident at the Toronto airport in mid-September.
Well, we apologize for any inconvenience, but really it's more than inconvenience. This is, personal information about people's medical conditions. It's very, very personal, and it should not, that privacy should not be breached. It's unacceptable.
Worse yet, Coastal Health admits the laptop was not reported missing for 10 days. The health minister says that's not good enough.
We all have an obligation to do our utmost to protect that private information. Secondly, when something does happen, a loss or a theft, we have to move quickly and immediately to ensure that everything's being done that can be done to retrieve the information.
Coastal Health says the medical resident who lost the laptop has been given a verbal warning. Can you guarantee it won't happen again?
I wish I could, but all I can say is that we will try our best to make sure it doesn't.
So no guarantee, and this is really scary. There's a lot of private, sensitive medical information out there. I mean, how safe really is it?
That's an interesting question because Coastal Health says that with so many staff members, students and doctors carrying patient information on laptops and memory sticks these days, this kind of carelessness and human error is bound to happen again. But it is looking at changing policy to make sure patient files on USB sticks are encrypted in the future.
So is that good enough for Carolina?
Well, I gave her the news this afternoon, and she's still calling the breach shameful and scary and says she doesn't care whether it's a medical resident or the Pope. She does not want her private medical information shared with a doctor who didn't even treat her and then carried this information around on laptops or memory sticks.
All right, good story. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you.
To another story now broken by CTV News. There are calls tonight for an apology from an NPA candidate who's running for Vancouver City Council. The candidate is under fire for going online to rate, among other things, the sexual performance of the women he's dating. St. Alexander now with the fallout from what critics are calling a very serious lack of judgment.
I am shocked that he wanted to have a date.
In case you missed it, that's a healthy dose of sarcasm. NPA candidate Suzanne Anton trying to poo-poo a story CTV News uncovered last night.
I'm sorry, but your input isn't being listened to.
Jason LaMarche is running for council under Anton's banner. He's also author of The Date Matrix, an online spreadsheet where he rates out of 10 the women he dated on intelligence, whether they were single, whether they were good in bed.
The Date Matrix, what's that all about?
Haha, that was a funny thing I did as a commerce student.
Anton says her candidate is just a typical young man.
As a woman, you weren't offended by that?
I think I've said what I need to say about it.
No, but
you know what? No, I'm a mother too. I have 2 sons. Young guys want dates with girls.
LaMarche, who's 34, made his list in 2007. His opponents quick to criticize.
It's on his website today. He's ranking women who he runs into to see if they'd be good date material because he's such a girl magnet that he just has to keep the priorities right.
We need women in decision-making positions. We do not need to be rating women on scores that are outdated by decades.
Well, these kinds of things take on additional importance in campaigns.
City Hall watcher Francis Bula says the election is getting nasty.
It always does. You know, in the modern day when you can do forensic Facebook research and find all kinds of stuff online that people shouldn't have posted, this is a part of political campaigns these days.
We'll make a list. Rachel and Julie, pros and cons.
We've certainly seen men, even women, rate each other in pop culture. On Friends, Rachel was crushed.
Just a waitress?
LaMarche did not name any of the women he rated. He says he does not regret making the list, even though he's running for office.
And I have a sense of humor. You can come have a beer with me. We'll talk about the issues. I'm trying to put a new spin on politics.
Well, he certainly did that, St. John. Now, did Suzanne Anton know about the date matrix before we broke the story last night?
Yeah, no, Mike, she says she did not. And she went on to tell us that she thinks that LaMarche is a great guy. He cares very much for this neighborhood and Vancouver, and that he would make a great city councilor. Mike?
All right. St. John Alexander, live in Vancouver tonight.